it or not, it's nearly 20 years since Pong first appeared in amusement arcades around the world, seducing the youth of the era and paving the way for a totally new means of entertainment, the video game.
Greetings, Earth creatures. Yet do not panic. Your time is yet to come. Get up, you fool. I, Supreme Commander of the new Rexon Empire, present for you a glimpse of your destiny.
Computer and video games have come a long way in the 2 decades since Pong, and contrary to popular belief, a video game of today is generally not the product of some adolescent bespectacled teenager working his way through hours of computer code and coffee. Modern state-of-the-art video games are a much more complex affair.
That was the latest creation from Ocean, one of the UK's leading software houses. I've come to their Manchester offices to find out exactly what's involved in the making of a top-selling video game.
Ocean have been involved in the business of video games for over 10 years. The company started from small offices in Manchester, producing cassette-based games for the Sinclair Spectrum and Oryx computers. Games in those days were limited to 48K. Nowadays, things are very different. The advent of new technologies, and in particular CD-ROM, has meant that games publishers, such as Ocean, have pushed back the boundaries of the video game. Gary Bracey, Ocean Software Director.
As Software Director, my overall responsibility is the development of all the products. I oversee many different formats of each of the games that we develop. We have a very large development team here in-house in Manchester, but also have a wide range of developers throughout the country and indeed in many different parts of the world. The concept of the game can come from a number of different sources. Sometimes we'll get a license, such as the recent Jurassic Park. Other times we get approached with an original concept. For instance, recently DID approached us with a concept for 2 games, TFX and Inferno, which have come, 2 ideas which have come from their heads basically. And we were very, very keen on the ideas, and we commissioned them to develop the games for us.
These are the offices of Digital Image Design, or DID, the people who actually thought up Inferno and TFX. More than that, they've had to take the games from idea stage right through to the finished product.
Sean Hollywood is DID's Art and Design Director. From a background in film and television, Sean's help was enlisted to give the Inferno project a cinematic feel.
Surrounding room and all.
Well, the first stage in the design of the game was, obviously we have a brainstorming session where everybody gets the opportunity to put forward their ideas, but then we put them into a melting pot and then storyboard them. But in terms of Inferno, the space game, development started firstly to see if we could logistically do it. We thought of some new techniques that we'd like to incorporate into the design of the game, with graphical techniques as well as 3D techniques for the in-game stuff. When the feasibility had been kind of researched, we would go ahead then. But we kind of do development on a number of multiple fronts. You know, the design will go on not in tandem with the technology as well as the artwork. So nothing is done in isolation, because we work very much as a team.
DID's team consists of 7 coders, 4 3D graphic designers, 4 artists, an aeronautical engineer in Scotland, and a professor of aeronautics at Princeton. Between them, they've worked over 60,000 hours and have written over 750,000 lines of code on the Inferno project alone. The project demanded the ultimate in realism, so Sean devised complex 3D sculpting techniques to model the alien creatures.
We use 3D computer-generated modelling for our characters, but they're based on sculptural models that we have constructed to actually develop the characters, so they're real objects to start with. We were quite sceptical at first about taking on something like sculptural models, but the process that we went through to do it ended up being very fruitful. We firstly constructed the skeletal heads of our characters and then laid flesh on them. We interpreted then the real heads inside the computer using a rendering package, and we used those for slightly longer distance shots and general point of view graphics where detail on the face isn't necessary.
To achieve this level of realism and complexity of gameplay, Inferno utilises a unique 3D graphics modelling system. Gary Bracey explains.
This product's based on polygon technology, which means that you have a 3D environment, and what you see is moving in a first-person perspective. The screen is your eyes, and so you are taking the viewpoint of your spacecraft or aircraft flying through space. These are not pre-plotted sprites as is typical with a game. These are generated in software in real time. So in other words, as you're flying through a mountain landscape, for instance, that mountain that's coming towards you isn't just drawn, isn't stored and thrown onto the screen and then a bigger one thrown onto the screen as you get closer. The computer actually works out the angle and the distance you are from this mountain and draws it itself. It generates it in real time. It works out that the mountain should be that big, at this angle, and bang, plots it on screen immediately, as well as that cloud up there and the enemy aircraft over there and all the relative angles and sizes. And the whole thing that generates all this we call the 3D engine.
DID's 3D engine was conceived by Martin Kenwright over 7 years ago and was first used in the flight simulator game F-29. Martin is now DID's managing director, and over the years the original engine has been refined to make it faster, more powerful, and the graphics more detailed. Inferno shares its 3D engine with another DID concept, TFX, a game based on a multi-million-dollar military flight simulator.
TFX is a very, very big game, but not just in storage capacity. We've managed to get the game to work on about 8 or 9 floppy disks. It's just that we've used compression techniques where the actual game, we've got over 13 megabytes worth of data, we've got down just to a few megabytes. And it won't choke up people's hard disks, and it can be run very fast and very smooth, so it really is big. It is a peace game. People play the game, if they as much as blow up a house or a tree that they're not supposed to, they become marshalled. We use some pretty vivid imagery via newspapers and things, famine and deprivation around the world and refugees, and we sort of combine the game into this topic, showing that, okay, you're not single-handedly changing the face of the world, you are playing a part, and even being a do-gooder, you will encounter resistance. You know, people across the world, for one reason, will resent what you're doing. And as well as from the topical side of it all, we've created some new technical features. The environments we've managed to emulate real environments in the world, you know, thousands of square miles of Colombian highlands or Somalian savannah or Yugoslavia, Balkans. We've managed to actually create that in reality by using digital elevation mapping for the ultimate effect. That is just where we've looked at what maps of them and set relief and altitude, so you created mountains where a mountain should be, or fields where a field should be. And then one of my favourite features is we've written the game to handle Dolby surround sound, which, if people are familiar with watching videos like Top Gun on the movies, they hear the sound effects of planes whooshing from back to front, from far from left to right. And we've actually got the technology now where we can do that on a PC game.
Dolby sound steering, digital elevation mapping, and that's not all. The CD version of TFX contains over 100 megabytes of new graphical sequences, a 1/4 gigabyte of digital audio soundtrack, and several missions which don't exist on the floppy disk version of the game. One of the most important elements in any video game is the music. It has to convey the mood, atmosphere, and the feel of the game, and it also helps set the pace of the gameplay. Inferno has been developed for CD-ROM. This means that a CD-quality soundtrack can be heard whilst playing the game.
You seek magic. You know all the tricks.
For this particular project, Ocean collaborated with a major music name, Nick and Mrs. Fiend of goth rock band Alien Sex Fiend. But how did this unlikely partnership come about?
We had a phone call from, in fact it was the record company, to say that they'd had a phone call from a company called Cox Randall Link asking if we'd be interested in doing music for computer game soundtracks. And we said, well, okay, you know, we'll talk about it. So I called the Cox Randall up and we had a further chat, ended up having a meeting, and just more questions really of how it was going to be done, what exactly was it that they wanted. Did they want Alien Sex Fiend the band? Did they want Nick and myself to do it? You know, were there going to be any vocals? Was it being done in a recording studio? You know, how? I've got a Game Boy, and in fact I had Ocean's Batman on my word processor, which I used to write letters and stuff. So yeah, we had some idea of what that area was about, and also we've done a lot of arcade games, haven't we? Service stations on tour.
Around the world, yeah.
Tron was a favourite for
Yeah.
quite a while. That was always a good sounds and move around within it. So yeah, we had some idea of it, but really no conception as to the amount of work that went into actually designing something like this.
So, after 5 weeks intensive work, working alongside Ocean's in-house musician, Barry Leach, how did writing the music for a video game compare with, say, writing an album?
It's the same result. You get the same result at the end of it. i.e. making something that seems really small, like on a DAT or on a cassette tape, and you've had 5 weeks of up, down, and very indifferent moods for me. Because I'm not quite so musical, I can hear what I like. It was the same process, but I'm not able to mix it or go and put a guitar on it, because most of the things were done up through keyboards and onto computers. So all I could do was direct, and that's very frustrating to sit there for 5 weeks. A bit like being a trainer of a football team. You go, Barry, stick it in the net, for God's sake. So it's the same thing. I find my main thing is making the team.
And how different did Barry find it working with a live band?
Very different. Usually I'm used to it. I get asked to write a piece of music and I sit there and write it, and it's only got to please me and the guys who's designed the game or whatever. But here I've had 3 extra heads saying, no, take that guitar out and put this
That's been marvellous. I mean, I was sitting there for my parts of things, thinking, how are we going to get a tune that would be to do with the moon or to do with all these different aspects of space and everything. So we had a little spaceship, and then I learned how to control it, which I'd never done before. I was a bit ignorant on computers. I only got a 8256 like Amstrad little thing with a little scanner and that. So this was brilliant to have a 3-dimensional little spaceship that you could send it right deep into space, or make it go around the planet, or bring it down through the atmosphere. And that way we could write the music and give the sinister feeling as you approach the alien sort of areas, or we could make it really euphoric and that as you sort of just went up and everything was timeless. And this had to be a bit more open and ambient to give the feeling, but not specifically in any part. You couldn't tie it up. But what we've done since on Playback is played the music back and actually gone into the mode of the game, and certain bits like Barry would be letting bombs off or something, blowing stuff up, and it would all go in as though we'd written it on purpose to actually do that.
You can actually fly around to the music as
Yeah,
well. You know,
yeah.
like that certain sweeps in the music make kind of swing about left and then right.
Oh yeah, it's well
It's
handled.
really good. I can imagine some people flying around certain areas of the planet, just, you know, they don't want to kill any aliens, they're just flying around. You know.
They might be passive, yeah, just sort of floating
sort
around.
of chill out area of the planet or something.
So once the soundtrack's completed and Barry's added all the sound effects, the music has to be converted for use on sound cards on the PC. But what then?
Before a finished game hits the shops, it has to go through one final process, which can take thousands of hours. Quality assurance. In other words, these guys get paid to play games.
We have our own in-house testing department here, which employs about 20 people, young lads who live to play games. And they will be given this game, maybe just 3 or 4 of them will be given the game to test. They'll play around with it. What we'll normally do is have 2 people who normally enjoy playing this type of game who will play it, and 2 people who don't necessarily like this style of game. Just to see how much this genre can overlap and bridge the gap between someone who wouldn't traditionally play this style of game. We want it to appeal more generically, so we want to try and bridge those gaps as well. So we'll introduce this game to these 4 people and we'll elicit their feedback as to how challenging it is, how desirable it is, whether it appeals to them on a presentation basis.
This information is fed back to DID, who then incorporate any valid points or constructive criticism into the game. When DID feel that they have a product which is 100% complete, the game is sent back to Ocean for final testing.
And then we put it through the ringer. We have our complete testing department playing it from start to finish, throwing the joysticks against the wall, pressing all the keys on the keyboard, anything to make the thing crash, lock up, anything to cause a bug. We want to make sure that what goes out into the streets is as flawless as possible. And because the game is so huge, there are obviously many derivatives of actions that can be taken. And it's virtually impossible to cover every one, but we try. So they'll try and make bugs. They will test it in such a way that, play it in such a way that it's not supposed to be played. And of course, constantly keep an eye out for the playability element. Is it too difficult? Is it too easy? Did I progress at a satisfactory rate? The problem is it can become tedious because whereas they may get into it and get to the 50th level or something, there may be a bug in the 2nd level, which means that they have to keep playing the 2nd level over and over and over again. That can be very, very tedious. So all the people who think that games testers have it easy and what a dream job, it's not, because it can be rather repetitive and tiresome. They do a very good job and they have to keep their wits about them all the time. A lot of pressures on them because the game could potentially stand and fall on what they find.
In order to play any game, you need a set of instructions. Inferno's instructions come in the form of a cleverly designed comic. This was created by leading comic book artist Sean Phillips of Judge Dredd fame.
Well, I'm involved in Inferno in the fact that I am writing and drawing a comic to go with the game. It's part of the instruction manual. It's a sort of introduction to the characters and the world they inhabit. And we just sort of sat down and decided what we wanted to concentrate in the comic was the human interaction, or the interaction between the humans and the aliens, which isn't part of the game, but it's something we can do in the comic which they can't do in the game. Now, the characters were science fiction cliches. You get your human blonde-haired hero, and you get your ugly evil aliens. So it played on all the things from like Flash Gordon to Star Wars to everything in between. So that there is a sort of a history of caricatures in the comics as well. They do sort of go together quite well. They're not meant to be new and original. I mean, we're playing up the stereotypes and the cliches of it. Nothing drastic can happen to the characters. They can't die at the end or anything. We've got to make sure they finish the comic as they started, because they appear in the game. And, if we killed the characters off at the end of the comic, then you couldn't play a game. With Inferno, the player will perceive a tremendous degree of depth and realism, where you'll be able to go from the cosmic, which is the whole solar system that the game takes place in, down to the planetary, down to the installation. And the end result maybe will be completely encapsulated for the player, where everything is believable, everything has got a function. It's not just some abstract things thrown together and you shoot each other. We've tried to go beyond what ordinarily would be a computer game, and that's what we're hoping the public will sense in our products and like about them.
Because Inferno was originally the sequel to a game called Epic, in fact we loosely do have it as a sequel. It's 90 years on from the game we launched a year ago. I obviously would like to see some sort of continuity and some sort of parallels drawn. But Inferno, in my eyes, is where Epic left off. There were so many things we wanted to do with Epic, and we ran out of time. So we're now the second bite of the cherry, as it was, with Inferno, and we're hoping it will be perhaps the definitive space game.
This sort of technology doesn't just appear. It's refined over a number of years. DID have been working on their 3D engine for as long as I've known them, which is 5 years, and I know beyond that. It's an extremely specialist area and requires many years' experience. What they've done is they've brought this 3D technology in with some very, very creative ideas and have brought forth something we feel is pretty unique, which is something that is technologically innovative, but at the same time compelling gameplay-wise. And very, very rarely are those two elements combined. You usually get something that's considered real state-of-the-art and is technologically, wow, mind-blowing. But you scratch the surface and there's only a little bit more surface underneath, and that's it. Or you've got something that's plays great, but it doesn't really break any barriers technologically. We feel we've brought both of those elements together and thrown a few others into the pot for good measure, like the music, like the presentation with the comic book. And all in all, we feel we've got a pretty unique package and something where everyone associated with this product is going to be very, very proud of.
Well, it's a far cry from the days when one guy could just run up a computer game in his bedroom at home. So, if what we've just seen is the interactive technology of today, just think what things are going to be like in 10 years' time.
Okay, weirdos.
Sing to Jesus.
Ich mag diese Sorte Musik nicht.
Get around to it, get a smell at it, get a big kick out of it, gave your life to it, get into it, get into it.